Hi, everybody. Today's live stream is called "Taking Up Space," and it's all about the other side of singing besides just the physicality of it.
Right. So very often when we're talking about how to sing, we think very mechanically about what's happening in our bodies and what physical changes we need to make our voices as free as they can be, as resonant as they can be. But very often we don't consider why our bodies are reacting the way they are. Almost always we find in our studios that our students' physical problems, the challenges that they faced, are driven by psychological factors such as imposter syndrome or fear of high notes. And our bodies absorb our fears and react by creating different physical habits that then make it harder to sing freely.
Right. So a lot of different common issues, all that we find in our singers and in ourselves, they can all kind of stem back to this idea of being allowed to take up space. And when we talk about taking up space, that can mean a lot of different things. That can mean, we talk in all of our things, we talk about mind, body, heart, spirit, and really that plays into this as well. So you can talk about taking up space vocally, being allowed to use the full size of your instrument. We talk about taking up physical space. This is a huge one because we're in our society, we are taught that you have to be small, you have to be thin, you have to not take up more space than is deemed appropriate. And that creates a lot of compensatory physical habits in our bodies that we are almost never aware of until we have our awareness brought to those things.
Absolutely.
It also means taking up mental space, your ideas, letting your ideas have room to exist, have room to breathe, and then emotional space, being allowed to feel emotion, giving validation to your emotions.
Absolutely. And to your emotional experiences. Because when we sing, very often it can be so cathartic to allow ourselves to express these deep emotions that we have within us. And if we feel like we're not allowed to take up that emotional space, it makes it very difficult for us to communicate freely and effectively. This manifests in our voices in so many different ways. If we don't feel like we're allowed to take up space in the studio, it means that we're going to stay narrow, which has a big impact on the way our bodies align and on the way that we breathe, on the way that we allow ourselves to use the breath, which, as we've talked about in other workshops and webinars that we've given before, when our bodies stay narrow, so does the resonating space that we're using. And so it has a big impact on our sound as well. But there are so many different ways that this manifests. Sometimes people feel like, for example, people in male bodies who have been, made fun of for being scrawny or thin in their lives might even try to thicken themselves. And by doing that, they're adding so much muscle to their voices. But the way that we think that we should move through the world has such a major impact on the way that we feel like we're allowed to use our voices. And without addressing all of those hurdles in our paths, it's really hard to get through the technique.
Mm-hmm. Think about how much you have to, when you're a singer, you have to allow expansion in your body. When you breathe in, when you're singing, we talk about this all the time, that you expand, you breathe low into your body, you allow that expansion to occur. But think about how hard that can be for a lot of people that are taught you have to suck in all the time. You have to tighten those abs, you have to tighten the core, you have to stay thin, you have to stay trim looking. One of the things you like to say all the time is, I'm going to get it wrong if I try to say it, about society's expectation versus your ability to take in oxygen.
Yes. So very often, the reason that our bodies don't allow us to breathe low sometimes, the reason that some singers breathe high and we see them breathing here, is because they are tightening some muscle group below where we are seeing them inhale. So if their cores are tightened, they cannot necessarily, they're breathing high because their bodies can't expand low. When their bellies release, when their core muscles release, they are able to breathe lower because their bodies are allowed to expand there. So essentially what this means is, when we don't allow our bodies to take in enough air, or to breathe low, when we don't allow our bodies to expand low, it's because we are more concerned about what other people think of our bodies, about how we look, than we are about feeding our bodies the oxygen that they need to survive, or feeding our bodies the air that we need to support our sound. It's a shocking thing when we think about it that way, that we have allowed our opinions of other people's opinions of us, of our bodies, to control whether or not we breathe, we work through our normal bodily functions, because we are so afraid of other people's opinions of us.
That's right. And so we see all the time in the voice teaching world, in different voice teaching forums and whatnot, people will say, I have this student that I can't get them to project their voice, is the term that we see a lot, which that's a whole different issue.
We'll have another
one of these about projecting the voice. But
yes.
But yeah, the volume is something that they're trying to figure out, that I can't get this singer to sing out. I can't get them to have any sort of dynamic variability. What do? I've tried breathing exercises. I've tried laryngeal things. I've tried all this different stuff to get them to sing louder, and I can't do it. And our response is always along these lines of, they don't feel like, you have to recognize that this is not a physical problem. That singer doesn't feel like they are allowed to take up space. They feel like they are doing everything they can to shrink away and to not exist in a way that people will notice them. And so no amount of physical technique is going to undo that. They need to be given permission to make some noise, to not be perfect, and to just be them, to take up the space that they deserve in the world, vocally, mentally, emotionally, physically. And boy, the immediate results that we've seen from people who are given that permission, it's astounding. And one of my favorite ways to do that, one of my favorite ways to give people that permission to just take up space, make some noise, and release all of those kind of shackles of taking up space, is by making animal sounds, actually, by doing primal noises. And one of my favorite ones is doing wolf howls. So wherever you are right now, I'm going to try to do this without blowing out the microphone, but I'm going to stand back here, and you just let it rip like you're howling to the moon. Oh! Oh! And you just do that for all of your friends and neighbors and invite them into it. And our dog just started howling along with me. And just let it go, and don't worry about trying to make it sound good or adding vibrato or anything like that. Just make noise and see what that feels like, to just let your voice be heard, to take up space, and see what that does, not just in your singing life, but in the rest of your life as well.
Yes. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Bye-bye.